Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God, back with you with the next video in my series, reading The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. Without further ado, returning to The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, as read by Lord Naren White.
My ma's gonna let me have one. Oh, goody. I hope she'll let me come. Well, she will. The picnic's for me. She'll let anybody come that I want, and I want you. That's ever so nice. When is it going to be? By and by. Maybe about vacation. Oh, won't it be fun? You going to have all the girls and boys? Yes. Everyone that's friends to me, or wants to be.
And she glanced ever so furtively at Tom. But he talked right along to Amy Lawrence about the terrible storm on the island, and how the lightning tore the great sycamore tree.
All to Flinders.
While he was,
Standing within 3 feet of it. Oh, may I come?
said Grace Miller.
Yes. And me?
Said Sally Rogers.
Yes. And me too?
Said Susie Harper.
And Joe? Yes.
And so on, with clapping of joyful hands till all the group had begged for invitations but Tom and Amy. Then Tom turned coolly away, still talking, and took Amy with him. Becky's lips trembled, and the tears came to her eyes. She hid these signs with a forced gaiety, and went on chattering. But the life had gone out of the picnic, now and out of everything else. She had got away as soon as she could, and hid herself, and what her sex call a good cry. Let me read that again so we get the connotation correct. But the life had gone out of the picnic. Now, and out of everything else, she got away as soon as she could and hid herself and had what her sex call a good cry. Then she sat moody, with wounded pride, till the bell rang. She roused up now, with a vindictive cast in her eye, and gave her plaited tails a shake, and she knew what she'd do. At recess, Tom continued his flirtation with Amy, with jubilant self-satisfaction, and he kept drifting about to find Becky and lacerate her with the performance. At last he spied her, but there was a sudden falling of his mercury. She was sitting cozily on a little bench behind the schoolhouse, looking at a picture book with Alfred Temple, and so absorbed were they, and their heads so close together over the book, that they did not seem to be conscious of anything in the world besides. Jealousy ran red-hot through Tom's veins. He began to hate himself for throwing away the chance Becky had offered for reconciliation. He called himself a fool, and all the hard names he could think of. He wanted to cry with vexation. Amy chatted happily along as they walked, for her heart was singing, but Tom's tongue had lost its function. He did not hear what Amy was saying, and whenever she paused expectantly, he could only stammer an awkward assent, which was as often misplaced as otherwise. He kept drifting to the rear of the schoolhouse again and again, to sear his eyeballs with the hateful spectacle there. He could not help it, and it maddened him to see, as he thought he saw, that Becky Thatcher never once suspected that he was even in the land of the living. But she did see, nevertheless, and she knew she was winning her fight, too, and was glad to see him suffer as she had suffered. Amy's happy prattle became intolerable. Tom hinted at things he had attempted to attend to, things that might be done, and time was fleeting. But in vain the girl chirped on. Tom thought,
Oh, hang her. Ain't I ever going to get rid of her?
at last, he must be attending to those things, and she said artlessly that she would be around when school let out, as he hastened away, hating her for it.
Any other boy, Tom thought, grating his teeth. Any boy in the whole town but that St. Louis smarty that thinks he dresses so fine in his aristocracy. Oh, all right. I licked you the first day you ever saw this town, mister, and I'll lick you again. You just wait till I catch you out. I'll just take
And he went through the motions of thrashing an imaginary boy, pummeling the air and kicking and gouging.
Oh, you do? You do? You holler enough, do you? Now, then, let that learn you.
And so the imaginary flogging was finished to his satisfaction. Tom fled home at noon. His conscience could not endure any more of Amy's grateful happiness, and his jealousy could bear no more of the other distress. Becky resumed her picture inspections with Alfred, but as the minutes dragged along, and no Tom came to suffer, her triumph began to cloud, and she lost interest, gravity, and absent-mindedness followed, and then melancholy. 2 or 3 times she pricked up her ear at a footstep, but it was a false hope. No Tom came. At last she grew entirely miserable, and wished she hadn't carried it so far. When poor Alfred, seeing that he was losing her, he did not know how, kept exclaiming,
"Oh, jolly! Oh, here's a jolly one! Look at this!"
she lost patience at last and said,
"Oh, don't bother me. I don't care for them,"
and burst into tears and got up and walked away. Alfred dropped alongside and was going to try to comfort her, but she said,
"Go away and leave me alone, can't you? I hate you."
So the boy halted, wondering what he could have done, for she had said she would look at pictures all through the nooning, and she walked on, crying. Then Alfred went musing into the deserted schoolhouse. He was humiliated and angry. He easily guessed his way to the truth. The girl had simply made a convenience of him to vent her spite upon Tom Sawyer. He was far from hating Tom the less when this thought occurred to him. He wished there was some way to get that boy into trouble without much risk to himself. Tom's spelling book fell under his eye. Here was his opportunity. He gratefully opened to the lesson for the afternoon and poured ink upon the page. Becky, glancing in at a window behind him at the moment, saw the act and moved on, without discovering herself. She started homeward, now intending to find Tom and tell him. Tom would be thankful, and their troubles would be healed. Before she was halfway home, however, she had changed her mind. The thought of Tom's treatment of her when she was talking about her picnic came scorching back and filled with shame. She resolved to let him get whipped on the damaged spelling book's account, and to hate him forever into the bargain. Chapter 19. Tom arrived at the home in a dreary mood, and the first thing his aunt said to him showed him that he had brought his sorrows to an unpromising market.
"Tom, I've a notion to skin you alive." "Auntie, what have I done?" "Well, you've done enough. Here I go over to Serene Harper, like an old softy, expecting I'm going to make her believe all that rubbish about that dream, when lo and behold she'd found out from Joe that you was over here and heard all the talk we had that night. Tom, I don't know what it is to become of a boy that will act like that. It makes me feel so bad to think that you could let me go to Serene Harper and make such a fool of myself and never say a word."
This was a new aspect of the thing. His smartness of the morning had seemed to Tom a good joke before, and very ingenious. It merely looked mean and shabby now. He hung his head and could not think of anything to say for a moment. Then he said, "We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again."